Welcome back to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast. Today we're joined by artist, educator, and mental health advocate Emily Taylor Rice. Emily is a multidisciplined artist working across printmaking and photography. Her work explores themes including mental health, addiction, vulnerability, recovery, and the neurobiology of alcoholism. Through deeply personal and emotionally powerful pieces, she uses art as a way of creating conversation, connection, and understanding around experiences that are often hidden and misunderstood. Emily holds an MFA in print media and photography from Boston University College of Fine Art and has taught internationally for many years across Asia and the Middle East. Her work has been exhibited in galleries and institutes across America, but also internationally, and she's become known for using creativity to challenge stigma and open up honest dialogue around addiction and recovery. Emily, it's a real privilege to welcome you to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast.
Thank
Welcome, Emily.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you
It's
for
great.
that lovely introduction. I appreciate it. And I'm
And
happy to be here.
and another guest from over the pond, which is great. It's lovely to have you along. So our third, maybe fourth international guest, I think, on the podcast, which is
Okay.
amazing. But for Emily, for those of our listeners that may not be familiar with your story or your work, would you mind just talking a little bit through your journey from kind of growing up, how alcohol featured in your life to kind of where you are right now, whatever you're comfortable to share?
Sure. My story, I guess I'll start off by saying that it is one of going to very low lows, rock bottoms, and but that's not to say that I think that I do have a history of telling my story and sharing my experiences so that I can inform others that they don't have to go to the lengths that I've gone or the depths that I've gone before making a decision to stop drinking or removing alcohol from their lives. But it's also a story of unexpected addiction. And I was not knowledgeable about what alcohol could do to me, what it could do to my brain and my body over chronic use. But I'm from the States, I'm from Pennsylvania and Western Pennsylvania. Grew up here and full circle internationally. I've just moved back to the area about a year and a half ago. But I am from a family, a loving family I've got three siblings. I'm the third of four. And I always like to say that we grew up, uh, not with what we needed. Sometimes I think as kids you want things like let's go to Disneyland, and but we didn't necessarily have things like that. But we had a strong bond as a family, growing up camping, and really close. And we still have a really loving family. And two of my siblings still live in town. One's across the states. It was normal growing up. I was a soccer player and always involved in my art activities. And by the time I was in ninth grade, I had made the varsity soccer team, and some older seniors on our team invited us younger teammates out to a house party, and I was introduced to alcohol for the first time. So I had an idea. I already had this vision in my head of what alcohol could do for me and what it did for others. And in that, you know, it was a thing that the cool kids did, and I had older people in my life, I think that I really respected and looked up to, that they were drinkers and had gotten involved with alcohol. So I already had this perception of it being something that was to be romanticized, I guess. So yeah, I had my first introduction to alcohol. My first drink was a screwdriver. I liked it, and I think I had multiple. But I think from that point on, it was that first time that I had alcohol that I knew that it was going to do something for me. I From that point on, I never really was a middle of the road drinker. I drank to get drunk. I liked the effect. I liked the feeling. I liked the confidence that it gave me. And I guess I felt like, like I had found a long lost friend or something. So through high school, and I pretty much got my hands on it when I could, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and then college, I went to school here in town, and good grades, and but I continued to drink on the weekends. But I think in college, this kind of seep into like long 4-day weekends, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And by the time I graduated, it was just kind of a part of my weekly routine. But again, it was drinking to get drunk. There wasn't really a um, calm respect with alcohol. The goal was to pretty much get sloshed.
Get drunk. Yeah.
Um, And yeah, after I graduated, I have the the telltale story of heartbreak. I was 23 or 24 years old and didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I'd been living in Pittsburgh, and um, my dad actually suggested that I think about going overseas to teach for a bit because I had been substitute teaching for a number of years. And so I looked into it and I landed a job in Taiwan. So I moved
Oh
to
wow.
Taiwan and
Wow.
signed on for a year, taught English, and ended up staying for almost 4 years. But when I got there, I quickly found people who drank like me very quickly. And it began a routine of teaching every day, drinking at night, and my drinking started to creep earlier and earlier into the day. And eventually, is when I started morning drinking. And I guess I had this arrogant idea that I didn't want to deal with my hangovers anymore. So I would eventually drink my hangovers away and just maintain this buzz. And it was kind of like I felt like I had this secret that I carried around with me daily that I could just enjoy life on this kind of plateaued
Plateau.
buzz 24 hours a day, you know, and then on the
Mhm.
evenings or the weekends, get a little bit more hammered when I was around people because I was also hiding the amount that I was drinking at this point. Um, but I really started to notice that hey, this is not normal, right? This is not normal behavior. Maybe I don't want to continue living my life this way. So, at one point, I recall calling my mom back here in the States, and I just said, "Hey, I think I'm drinking a little too much," and I was essentially asking for some accountability. And unfortunately, that honesty lasted only a few weeks, and I decided to take yet another geographical cure, if you will, kind of running away from my problems and move to Kuwait, which is right in the middle of the Middle East, in a
Yeah.
dry country to boot. So I thought, okay, well, this is going to solve the problem, you know. I won't have access to alcohol, and not thinking that I was the problem, thinking alcohol was the problem, or thinking that removes. I thought I could change myself by changing the location, but in hindsight, I learned that wherever we go, there we are. Wherever we go, we take ourselves with us. And my drinking got much, much, much worse. So after 4 years, I came home and proceeded to, I ended up going to rehab. I was having some withdrawal seizures, and I ended up in rehab 3 different times in the course of a calendar year. And after the second one, I had tried to go back. I went back to Taiwan for 3 months, hit my bottom, came back, and was ready to make a change. But it took again and again and again and again, and consequences. I didn't have legal consequences, but I was having health consequences, relational consequences with family members and friends, and it was the third time to go to rehab was my personal choice, and I was ready. I was done. I needed to make a change, and I knew that the change at this point started with me. So
Mm.
yep, I went back to that third rehab, and then shortly after I started in a 12-step program, and from there onwards I No, I did have a lapse about 3 weeks after getting out of rehab. I thought I would do an experiment with Listerine to kind of test the waters and see if I truly had a problem with alcohol. And turns out I did. Yeah, I so my last drink was actually a giant
Oh
bottle of
gosh.
green Listerine, and but I drank it. I had a buzz, and I thought, you know what? I really don't want this anymore. And that was my final drink, and been sober ever since October 21st of 2016. So going on about nine
Oh,
and a half years,
you're
going
coming
on
up 10
10 years
Wow,
years.
this
10
year.
years. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's the and after that I substitute taught for a while and wanted to teach overseas again. So I moved to China in 2018 and was there during COVID and working a recovery program while I lived in China for 4 years. Went back to school. I saved a lot of money not drinking.
Mm.
Uh, Went back to school in Boston and then just moved back to Pennsylvania a year and a half ago. So it's been literally the entire way around the planet.
That's
Wow.
that's an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing that so
Mhm.
openly and honestly.
Mm.
And that's, I guess, first of all, is to say congratulations on your achievement and coming up on 10 years. That's remarkable.
Thank you.
And
I
it
didn't
sounds,
do it alone.
no, I mean, I was quite fascinated by what you were saying there about moving from Taiwan to Kuwait. And your
Mm.
expectation would be that, well, there's not going to be any booze. But how did that, if you don't mind sharing, how did that actually play out in Kuwait? How were you literally just at home? Where was the booze when you were in Kuwait?
Well, when I got there, I arrived in my apartment and I had this overwhelming feeling of what have I done? What have I done? Like knowing that it was a possibility that I would not be drinking. And knowing that I had such an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. But there happened to be a lot of other expat teachers. We kind of lived in a compound of several buildings around the school. And someone that had been there for several years came around and said, "Hey, we're going to have a welcome party for the new faculty member, new teachers." And there and informed me that there would be booze available. And honestly, the wave of relief that I felt
Mm.
knowing, even though I didn't even have it in my system yet, it's just like the thought of it, knowing that it was going to be available in the next day or two, gave me such relief. So there was homemade, I guess, kind of like bootleg booze.
Moonshine.
And what's that? Yeah,
Moonshine.
it was like, but it was like this really dark. They called
Yeah.
it date rum, which I think
Right.
it was supposed to have been made from dates, whether or not it was. I think there were
Sounds
quite a bit
lovely.
of chemicals in it, and
Mm.
but I also learned how to make my own. I was just out of juice and sounds pretty gross, juice and bread yeast and sugar, and I was filling up those large what you'd see water or Gatorade in at a sports team, like the
Yeah.
big
Okay.
thermos um, on the end of a sports bench or something, a team bench. And I was making these giant, almost barrelfuls of homemade wine. And it ended up being quite strong, high in alcohol content. And that's what I drank for a number of years and found different people to buy it from on the
S-
DL.
So it's, yeah, it's almost a worse situation, isn't it? Because you end up making something that's probably extremely powerful and not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand how that's
But
a
it's
worse
kind of
situation.
crazy. Like if there's a will, there's a way. And I think that, the way that today I was told in early recovery to chase after my recovery the way that I chased after my drinking. And the lengths that I went to get alcohol, to make alcohol should be the way that I work to stay sober and to not drink and to um share my experience, strength, and hope. So that's what I do. I think about those polar opposites.
Mm. That's really interesting, particularly hearing that, that decision to move to the Middle East is such a huge decision to kind of distance yourself from it, but then obviously that desire still there to kind of find whatever way possible to have that. And then was it then back to, sorry, I lost track. Was it then back to Taiwan from there or?
Then it was back to the States. Yeah,
Right.
sorry, it was
Okay. No,
a
no, no.
train of destinations. Yeah, and I think that I was aware, I was conscious of the fact that I needed to stop drinking, but I think that alcohol has struck such a strong that mental obsession and that physical compulsion, it won out, like
Mm,
King Alcohol won out. But yeah, I came back to the States because um, ultimately I knew that I needed to get better. Um, I didn't right away. It was pretty much a waste of space. I came back to the States and was at my folks' house and pretty much just drank vodka for several months and didn't have a job, didn't have a car, and it's it was a low. It was a low low until I went to visit my brother out in Oregon, and I think my family was aware of what was going on, and they were aware of my struggles, and we had gone camping. This is of course my recollection of the situation. We had gone camping, and it was he and I, and he had brought one beer with him, and I was just shocked. And I looked at him, I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is it?" And so we shared it, and by the morning, I was already going into withdrawal because at this point, my drinking was I was drinking straight liquor daily, and to only have half of that beer, my body just it wasn't enough
mm,
for my system. So I ended up having a seizure and going to the emergency room out there, and um, came back to Pennsylvania and had all this testing done. I was fully aware of what was causing it, but I was able to like manipulate and lie to those around me that and convince people that I might actually have another kind of health condition. And there was at one point I had to have some kind of test done, and I wasn't supposed to eat or drink for a certain number of hours before going to have this test done. And by the time I got to the hospital, I ended up having a grand mal seizure in the lobby of the hospital. Was in ICU for 10 days and was sent from there directly to rehab. So, and I was belligerent. I did not want to go.
Really?
I did not think I had a problem. No.
That's so
So,
important, isn't it? That being self-motivated to want to do it, I think makes such a huge difference, doesn't it? If it's something that you feel that you're being forced to do, I think that
mhm.
that's all often destined to failure for a lot of people. So what changed over that? You mentioned when you went back on the third occasion, it was something you wanted to do. What changed
Yep.
between that second and third occasions?
I think that the first two times I had gone, I was basically saying what I needed to say, doing what I needed to do so that I could leave. And, I thought I could learn how to control it. I thought I could learn how to drink respectfully. So I thought it would teach me how to drink. And I experimented with that after both times. But after the second time, um, I went back to Taiwan, and it had been a number of years since I'd been there, but I was drunk when I landed, and I ended up being in Taiwan for about 3 months in 2016, and I had a number of jobs that I couldn't hold. I stopped driving my scooter around because I couldn't balance it. Um, because I was just drinking all day. Luckily, I had a roommate who was checking up on me, and but it got to the point where I hit my bottom. I had shut myself in my room, and I think that my body was just shutting down. Um, I was hitting that bottom, and I remember I had gone to the hospital. A friend and my roommate had um, they had gotten me to the hospital multiple times over probably the last month or month and a half I was there. And I hit this point where I I was eating crackers or toast in my bedroom and just the air conditioning pumping. And I had this brilliant idea that I thought that if maybe I put some like electrolyte powder in my vodka bottle, that that would like help me feel better or something, just these um disillusionments that we have, and I it was at that moment I just admitted defeat. And I called my mom. Actually, I said a little prayer and I said, God help me. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, I think I need to go back to rehab. I think I'm dying.
So the
And
moment of clarity.
yes. And I think that I booked a flight and I think I missed the flight. So my sister ended up helping her. And it turned out that my mom and my brother ended up flying to Taiwan and they had to literally pick me up and put me on a plane and bring me back to the States. And I waited a couple days before I got a bed in a rehab and I willingly went to rehab because I was done. But it just, if I had not had their help with that, I don't know if I'd be here today, So
Mm.
and I know that we push people to the point of it's almost like we expel them from our lives because they don't know how to help us anymore, and we use up all of our relational resources and push these people out of our lives. So I'm very grateful that when I made that phone call, that my family was still willing to help me at that point and at least help me to get back to the States um, and make a beginning on my recovery. So,
And
and
no,
after that, but I mean, I had pushed them to the point because after I got out of rehab, um, they helped me find an apartment. I had a little bit of money left in my bank account that they were able to put towards 1 month of rent, and I got to this apartment, and my stuff was there, and they hugged me and they said, "We love you and good luck." And
there's
that was
sorry.
No, and that was when I decided to make sure that I got involved in a 12-step program and actually use the tools that I had learned in rehab because I think subconsciously I had heard stuff in the first two, even though I wasn't willing to act on those suggestions. And then the third time I was listening, I was attentive, I had become teachable, and I then acted on those suggestions after that third rehab.
That was that complete mindset shift, right? But
Yeah,
it's I know James mentioned this a minute ago, but thank you so much for sharing that because that's an incredibly raw story, particularly towards the end there, and it's amazing to hear. And this one of the things I love about doing this podcast is that we speak to so many different people from so many different backgrounds, but that and sometimes we kind of think about our own relationships with alcohol, and thankfully we never got to a position like that. But hearing you talk early on about your first kind of introduction to alcohol and very quickly drinking to get drunk, that's something I can absolutely relate to and certainly carried through for a lot longer for me. So thank you for sharing that. I would kind of like to move on because and kind of talk about a little bit more about what you're up to now and
definitely.
your fantastic
Definitely.
the therapy you're doing through the artwork and everything. So how did that all start to come about through the teaching, or how did that start to move through from your recovery?
Yeah, a little bit. I After being sober for about a year, I decided that I really had a desire to be overseas again. So I um got a job in China, and over that first year I was able to, make amends with family and friends, and relationships began to be restored and trust being built back. And I got a job. So I left when I was about a year and 9 months into my recovery, and I was teaching art, and I realized that a lot of my having an art background from my undergrad, going into art education, a lot of my own artwork had really been for student examples and things like that in the classroom. And I thought I really still have this personal desire to create my own artwork like I used to, because that fell away for many years because of my drinking. Um, and so I decided to do an online master's program in art education through Boston University. I was teaching full time and COVID hit. So it was kind of all of these things happening at the same time. But it was actually COVID was actually quite a blessing in disguise because I had all this free time. Well, not a ton of free time, but more time to focus on my artwork, which was a part of this education program. And as I finished that up, I had some professors that saw my artwork and they asked, "Have you ever thought about getting a master's of fine arts?" And I thought, well, yeah, when I was younger, but I guess I hadn't really thought of it being a possibility. Um, so I had been in China. They closed the borders in China, so I wasn't able to leave, and we kind of had a second bout of it where we all went back into lockdown, and the borders opened in, I believe it was June of 2022, and I had applied to multiple schools in the States and decided to do my MFA at Boston University in person. So I did both degrees with them, and got out of China in time, came home, said hello to my family for about 3 weeks, and then moved to Boston and started my fine arts program. And I was doing all of this work that was directly related to my experience with drinking and recovery. And I kind of was putting it under this umbrella of memory and lived experience because I wasn't talking about it with anyone outside of my recovery circle. And my after the first semester I was there, one of my professors, she challenged me in a good way and said, like, what we need some clarity here. What are you talking about? Um, so that was when I decided I was 6 years sober at that point and decided to open up about my experience. And it was I told my classmates first and took some baby steps and then told my professors, and it was just like it was a wonderful experience. They were so supportive. And then I there were multiple faculty members that and other people in the art realm there that shared how they also had family members who struggled with alcoholism, or they had a friend, or it was just like all of a sudden this conversation just opened. Um, and it was just really a blessing that through my struggles, something I felt like I was starting to be able to help people talk about their own experiences. So I've continued that. I've just been completely open um, about my past, and with my artwork, I look at not only the emotional aspects of the chaos that happened, but also the joy and the freedom of living alcohol free today, and how I wouldn't give any of that up because any of those experiences up because it if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't be experiencing the freedom that I am today.
Mm.
That's a really that's a really great point. You've just blown our final question of the show, but we'll come back on. We'll come back. You'll understand what I'm talking about in a minute.
Come up with a new one, James.
But I think what you're talking about there is just absolutely fascinating, Emily, because what you've just described is alcohol steals your joy, right? I think
It
when
does.
you're drinking for so long and that's the only source of happiness and so much joy, it just blocks
Mm.
the path for other things that light you up to come through. And sometimes sometimes we talk about alcohol as being like a bright light or a loud noise, where it's deafening or it's just so bright you can't see anything else. And then when you switch it off, all of a sudden, think you can start to be able to see the stars when your eyes adjust, or you can hear other
Mm,
things, and all of these things start to grow over time. And I think, being alcohol free it's a bit like planting seeds in a garden. It takes a little while for these seeds to grow, but when they do, it just turns into this kind of beautiful garden that you've built. And I think it's always such a shame when alcohol just steals the joy that we get from other things. And clearly for you, it's art. And I think a lot of people, when they take a
Yes.
break from alcohol, there's a question around, well, who am I? What's my identity? What do I actually find joy from? And
Yep.
you've clearly moved. That art has become something that you've just, you've dovetailed into. You've stopped drinking, and art's come through as this thing that I'm looking at your art on your website now, and
Mm,
it's absolutely incredible. I would urge all the
Thank
listeners to
you.
go and look at it. It's emilyricestudio.com. We'll put it in
mm,
the show notes, but it's absolutely incredible. I mean, it really is.
mm, mm.
Um,
Thank
a
you.
huge talent. Was art something that you were always, was always a big thing for you, and you just kind of forgot about it because of drink? You put it to one side because of drinks. It wasn't something you discovered specifically after you stopped drinking. It was always there in the background.
It was always there. Even as a kid, I was constantly just had my hand in anything creative that I could get it into. And that's why I went into art education. But after college, I mean, it just completely, when I was in Taiwan, my artwork completely fell by the wayside. Um, I think that I think I made one attempt to do a pencil drawing, and it clearly wasn't turning out the way that I wanted it to when I was drinking. And I just kind of thought, well, I don't have time for this, you know? And I, when I first got sober, I remember I was still in rehab, and I remember thinking, like, well, what do I want to do? What is my identity? Who do I want to be? Because I'd spent so many years identifying with alcohol. I mean, alcohol was my partner in life, you know, and it really opened up um the door, especially the program of going back to school and having these assignments that were art related and these open-ended assignments where I could really pour my emotions into and really explore different medium. And I was specifically looking at printmaking and photography and just the experimental aspects of printmaking, partly because of all the layering that takes place, and I really connected with that, just the different layers of my experience, and also printmaking being something that involves a lot of pressure when putting it on a large printing press and putting the plate down and the blankets down, and then you're literally cranking and putting pressure on this plate and then pulling up a paper that has the remnants of whatever the designer drawing had been on the plate. And for me, it's that pressure, that tension, but then also these beautiful mark making, that the marks that can be left on the paper, and some of them they're beautifully layered, and then also sometimes they act as like these different types of scars that are there, but they are still a part of my story and still a part of my identity. So just really allowing the process and my experiences to guide the artwork has been really fulfilling for me, and it's just been an ongoing process of experimentation. And I'm trying to get even more people involved. I've recently started inviting different women in recovery up to my studio, teaching them some printmaking processes and doing collaborative work in that way. And I want to continue doing that and involving. That way, I get to kind of include the art education element, but also my art making, and it becomes a communal process then at that point.
One of the things that really sort of stands out from your work is your interest in neurobiology, and
Yes.
how that relates to alcoholism. How did that science aspect? Because obviously science and art don't necessarily always go together in people's minds. That they don't
Right.
in mine. Um, how did all that come about? How did you? What drew you to wanting to understand the neurobiology of addiction?
I think it began while I was in Boston doing my Master's of Fine Arts, and I started reading some different articles. I guess it started as a personal curiosity. I and I understand that, not everybody who drinks is an alcoholic, right? And but I understood that my brain works differently. There's something about me that is fundamentally different in how I process alcohol and my obsession over the mental obsession over it. And I just got curious about why that is. And it was kind of towards the end of my MFA, and I had been trying to contact some different neuroscientists, and I was finally in touch with this woman whose specific research focus was on the effects of alcohol on the brain. So she gave me all of this literature and these books, and she came to my MFA thesis show, which was completely lovely of her. And I started reading, trying to read, but it was almost like learning a foreign language. So I thought, okay, I need to take a step back and start from the beginning. And so I started um, reading articles, watching videos, looking up definitions, and just really taking baby steps at understanding the terminology first. So I have been taking some online courses through Harvard just about the fundamentals of neuroscience, and then looking at, okay, this is how a normal brain functions. What happens when we introduce alcohol into our system? And we look at alcohol, or we look at the dopamine effect and looking at the reward system, and how I'm interested in how chronic use um, can really affect the brain as well, and especially looking at brain scans and comparing a healthy brain versus an alcoholic brain, and the destruction or the dissipation of gray matter, and it's
Hmm.
visibly, you can see it on the
Yep.
scans, and that affecting memory and so many different things, and then using that and translating it visually into my artwork. So I didn't want to just use these images and put it in my art. I wanted to understand what actually was going on. So that I'm in that still. It's an ongoing research that I continue to do because I want it to inform my practice on a deeper level. And I want to be able to, I guess, understand about myself, but also there is, more recent connections between the arts and the sciences. And I have an interest in public health as well. And I'm actually going to be starting a PhD in the fall, and I'm hoping to take this research, the art education, then the printmaking and public health and the neuro together, and research that in the upcoming couple years. So it's all very intertwined for me. Um, but I really want the research to inform the art practice, because I think that having the two, the emotional aspect visually shown through my work, but then the scientific aspect showing, because we're emotional human beings, right? And we're also biological. And I think that we have so many different aspects of our identity, but we also have all these things culminating in who we are, and how alcohol affects all of that physically, emotionally,
It does.
mentally, spiritually. And I guess I'm interested in that holistic version of self and looking at all these different aspects.
Hearing you speak about that from when you started out, and that must have been an incredibly kind of emotional start to putting that artwork down in the very early stages, and seeing you talking about it now towards the end, you really kind of lighting up as you talk about it. Was it how did it feel as a journey in the early stages? It must have been really emotional. Was it quite hard at first before it started to? I guess it was almost like your own form of recovery in the earlier stages, right?
Yeah, it was, to be honest, it was really scary. Um, there was a lot of fear of rejection, even from um, sharing my content with my classmates and my professors at the time. Um, and I remember going to there was kind of an MFA mixer, meaning we all brought one artwork, And it was a couple different universities in Boston, different programs, and we all, maybe 4 or 5 different universities, and we all stood in a giant circle and we hung up our artwork behind us, and we had 1 minute to talk about our artwork and our piece and the meaning behind it. And we all had to stay put and then make a beeline to whoever we connected with. And I talked about my piece. I didn't say I was in recovery. I didn't say it had anything to do about me, but about what the work was focused on. And I had a woman come straight across the circle and she said, "Are you an alcoholic or do you struggle with alcohol?" And I said, "I do." And she said, "Me too." And it was just this reinforcement that others could connect. And I think that even though it was really scary and it was hard at first, and there's times where it still is hard, um, because I incorporate photography as well. And some of my thesis work was going through old video calls that I had made when I was drinking, that were still saved
Mm.
on an app, and photographs that I had taken of my like just falling down. I was always bruised and I had actually smacked my face on the pavement, cracked my tooth in half, and I had photos of all of it. So some of them I enlarged them and put them in my thesis show about that was the physical aspect of alcoholism for me. And but I still it's easier now. I think knowing that I don't live that way anymore. I'm not stuck in that place anymore. But there are times, I guess, when I work, if there's something I specifically want to focus on, a moment or an emotion or just something specific, I really do try to mentally put myself back in that circumstance. I often will put a song on and just put it on repeat for several hours as I kind of put myself back in that place, that time and place. And that can be hard. When I was still in school and navigating this for the first time, I asked a classmate to check up on me and one of my professors as well to just make sure that I was doing okay because it's, yeah, it's hard to kind of go back to some of the dark places again, um, and make sure that I don't get stuck there. So.
Have you, have you found that by sharing your vulnerability so publicly that that it's helped other people to kind of reach out to you and kind of connect with you who've had similar experiences?
Yes, most definitely.
You
I've
mentioned
had
a couple of people there.
multiple. Yep, I've had multiple people reach out, even DM me through my Instagram, and say, "Hey, what do I do? Hey, I'm struggling. Hey, I think I have a problem." Um, and then my goal is to direct them to resources or invite them if they're in town, invite them to come to a meeting with me, or just if they would just want to have a chat. Um, I'm not a coach like you, but I can at least share my experience and say, hey, this is what I did. Maybe try it. It'll work for you, or it might work for you. Because I really have found over the years that it's not a one size fits all. I think that we all recover in our own way, but that we can recover together in a community, even as we are now and talking about living alcohol free. Because I know that there's so many different pathways to get help. I also know I know someone that I used to drink with years and years ago who is currently not drinking, and he's found it to be quite lonely. Um, and I that makes me sad because I know that there's community out there, and reaching out. There are so many people who are willing to lend a hand or point you in
Mhm.
directions, of where there's resources available. And I think that my artwork has extended even beyond that, even beyond addiction, alcoholism, because I really try to talk about how we all struggle with something, and I've had last summer I had an open studio, and had multiple people come up to my studio and share how, maybe they're struggling with grief or loss or a health issue, be it cancer, or a family member who's struggling with something, a health issue, and how we all kind of go through the stages of, okay, there's acceptance, and what am I going to do about it? And, step by step processing this thing. Um, so I'm grateful for that. And I think that kind of comes back to what we were talking about before, is that I wouldn't change any of it, because even of these brief conversations that I get to have with others, maybe what I've experienced in the past can be something encouraging to them with what they're struggling with today, and then they can go on to get help for whatever specific that thing that is that they need help with. But and there's these moments of joy and connection that, hey, I've been there too, you know?
Yeah. We we always ask people at the end, that question you've just answered there, would you change anything? And I think for most people that come on the podcast, it's
Yeah.
normally a no, because everyone who comes on pretty much is alcohol free, and they've shared their stories as you have about alcohol. But yeah, most people say no, I wouldn't change it. It's who I am, and you have to have that kind of yin and yang, black and white. I think you have to have the dark before the dawn, don't you?
Yeah.
And it's made you who you are. And one thing that kind of comes across, just obviously we've never met before, Emily, we've never spoken, but you seem such a grounded and but also kind of radiant. You seem a really kind of calm, chilled. I don't know quite how to say it, but you just seem someone who's really content and really happy, and
Mm.
and that really comes across just in talking to you. Um, and do you think that is partly because of what you just articulated and what you've been through, and the fact that you've landed in a place now where you're clearly doing extremely well for yourself, you're producing wonderful art, and you've really got your life in a great place, but you've experienced the dark places, as you said. Do you think it all comes down to that kind of comparison?
I think that, I mean, today, um, I'm still a starving artist, by the way. That's another reason. Um, I think what I liked how you said it with the yin and the yang and the dawn, the dark before the dawn. And I think that I am happy today. I am content because I know that I'm going to be okay today. I know that I no longer have this alcohol, no longer has this hold over me, that there are so many other tools and things that I can do and people that I could go to if alcohol were to try to rear its ugly head again in my life. But there's so many, I've been able to distance it for so long that it's not my first go-to anymore. Before it was for everything. If I was happy, if I was sad, if I was scared, if I was feeling less than, alcohol was always the solution, or it made things better for a time, but it's no longer my go-to. And I think that, um, like, I know that I no longer have to live that way anymore. And I think, trying to think of what you said at the end of your question and bringing it back to that, the comparison of then and now. I guess one question that I get sometimes is, if there was a pill or there was a medicine that you could take that would let you drink and you wouldn't get drunk or you wouldn't be addicted to it anymore, would you take it? And it's like, again, my answer is no. I wouldn't do that, because the whole point is to I'm not I'm not trying to control. It was all about control with alcoholism. It was controlling me. I was trying to control it. It was this constant battle back and forth. And I think that one of the reasons I'm happy today is that my entire perception has changed. It's not a matter of control, it's a matter of what will make me happy. Did alcohol actually make me happy, or was it just a band-aid for something else? You know, what can I work on a deeper level, that or what needs to be solved, or what other layer of the onion needs to be peeled away, that I need to delve into, think to work on rather than just putting this band-aid of alcohol or even filling it with some other kind of addictive behavior. You know, and really looking at things face value. But and I love how like my without alcohol, it's enlarged my spiritual life. My physical health has gotten tremendously better. Um, and emotional health and how I treat others and how I view the world today. It's just, it's like this whole um like a new pair of glasses. I look at things differently. I understand things differently. And that's not to say that things are perfect, I'm very much a work in progress. It's one day at a time, and I think that's important for me to stay humble and to remain teachable because stuff's still going to challenge us along
Yeah.
the way.
Life still
It's not
happens, right?
like
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
rainbows and sunshine and butterflies all the time.
Mm,
Life still happens.
mm.
So,
I think the thing is though is that when you haven't got alcohol in your life, you just become so much more emotionally resilient, don't you? And
yes.
things you just become just a more resilient person, um, particularly mental health. I mean, physically, obviously, and your
Mhm.
physical health as well. But things just don't really affect you in the same way they do when alcohol's just like an anchor pulling you back. And
Mhm.
um,
And
yeah,
it's as you always say, James, isn't it? It's like it's the big domino, and the further you get away from it, once you take alcohol out the picture, it it becomes, what's next? What's next for
Mhm.
me? And like you just so beautifully put there with about the layers of the onion, and that's certainly how it feels to me now. I'm coming up 5 years alcohol free, and
Fantastic.
finishing my relationship with alcohol was very, very different to yours, but there's not a day that goes past where I'm not just so grateful that I did it, so grateful that, and there's no desire. It's just the further and further I get away from it, I think, yeah, I've got so much to lose now,
Yeah.
ultimately, and that's the biggest thing. So why would you, I guess?
Yeah, it almost is baffling to me. Like, why would I drink today?
Mm,
What would I gain? It would not fix anything, not make anything better. Um, And, it's like one of those things I love even hearing people that different guests that you've had on your podcast previously. Is one thing that people have said is that they've gotten more time back. And I
mm,
really,
yeah, that's a big
really
one.
relate to that.
Mm.
Um, so much so even in the early days, it was, what am I going to do with this time? Because
And that
I
can be
had
dangerous, can't
always,
it? That free time,
yeah,
boredom can be a real danger sign, I think.
mm,
definitely. Yeah.
mm.
And
Mm.
it's discovering what interests you, what do you want to do with this free time and the extra money. I was able to save money and put myself through school. I mean, what a miracle.
And that's a lot of
Here
money. That's people underestimate quite how. I mean, I think money tends to be the thing that people think about the least. People think about their health and and things like that.
hmm
Money's just because I think when you're buying booze, it just gets a free pass. It's like you don't even think about it. It's going in the trolley in the supermarket. I don't even
yeah.
think about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
You're agonising about what piece of cheese to buy based on what
Yeah.
one might be 50 cents cheaper than the other. But yeah, you're shoveling in like six bottles of
Yeah.
wine without even thinking
It's
about it.
like
Yeah,
it's the same thing with calories too for me. It was
Yeah.
like, all right, well,
yeah, it
alcohol was
is.
already included in the
Yeah.
list of things on the shopping
Mm.
list, but then also it was like I didn't count I was like I would be so careful about eating, I don't know, cakes or cookies or candies or whatever, but I didn't count any of the
No.
alcohol towards towards
Low
any of
fat yogurt in there.
Yeah, yeah. You got
yeah.
about 10% of your
3,000
daily
calories
allowance
of
left.
next.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you
Like a
mean.
bottle of vodka a day and
Yeah.
it's just yeah, outrageous. And I had an app early on too that I had to it allowed me to estimate how much money I was spending on booze. And I mean after a month or two
Just
it was just
uninstalled
there
it.
was no way.
Don't need that. Don't want to see that. Thank you.
I I still have my app for that.
Do
I
you?
don't, by no means I look at it
Oh, you mean the
very
one that
often.
shows how long you've stopped for?
How long you've stopped for? I
Yeah,
don't look at
yeah,
it
yeah.
very often. I've got one called I'm Done, and
Yeah, I've
I'm
got that
obviously
one.
coming up to, yeah, and yeah, let's just, yeah. I mean, it staggered me once you actually start to look at the money that you put aside for, and it's, it's not the
Mm.
sole reason to give up, but my God, it's a great benefit. when you actually
Hmm.
I
look at
mean,
it.
if you're looking at you, yeah, you're coming up on 10 years, Emily. I mean, you're looking at like 50 grand or something like that. Is that kind of,
Oh,
is that right?
yeah,
Have I did that
more than
right?
that. I
It's
mean,
crazy money. It's like a deposit on a house.
yeah,
Yeah,
or
Just
grad school. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's crazy money.
I
yeah.
mean, in the end, I was drinking almost a liter of Absolute a day. And that's like between 750 mils and then a liter a day. And I don't know why I wasn't buying the cheap stuff. It was
I was
just,
gonna say
I was
you.
like hoity-toity in my drinking, but it all went on credit card. It was all
Yeah.
credit card
Wow.
debt, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so that was another thing that I had to deal with when
Mm,
you know, had to try to find a job and needed a car and things and early days after rehab. So yeah, there's consequences, and mine were monetary consequences also.
mm, mm,
But yeah, getting a job and starting from square one. And but boy, I'll tell you, one of the other joys is just like I said, those restored relationships. My nieces and nephews, I absolutely adore being an aunt, and it's just been something, and that I can be a daughter again today, and um I'm trustworthy again. People count on me, whereas
mm,
before it was just I think people were waiting for the other shoe to drop for such a long time, and just just being unreliable, whether it was like either being drunk or being hungover, because like you said when we first started talking, just like functioning on this like 50-60%, um if you're hungover, and it's just we're not fully present, even when we think we are.
mm.
So the fact that I can be 100% present today. I mean, there's days that I'm sleepy, but at least
Yeah,
I'm
that's like part of the
sober.
thing. You were talking about time earlier. That's the thing that we don't really sort of think about is that it's the amount of time we spend thinking about
Thinking
alcohol,
about it. Yeah.
about how it
Mm,
just dominates. It's not the actual drinking itself or even the hangovers. It's the amount of headspace and cognitive resource that is just, we talk not to people in coaching about moderation and whether moderation is a thing for you or not. And I think Steve and I are very much to the opinion that just don't, why would you bother? Because it's just, why would you waste all of that mental energy negotiating with yourself about, am I going to have a drink today? Was it a special enough occasion? Or maybe I won't. It's just make a decision, commit
I
to a
think yeah.
break and take that decision off the table. And all of a sudden you can think about other things.
hmm
Yeah.
And the
Certainly if it's taken up
counting
that.
and the
Yeah.
calculating.
Oh,
Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. No, no, no. I think it's so true. It's just that mental. If it's taking up that mental bandwidth, if it's taking up that time, and you're really having to think about it, that's so often, then it just leaves you with one decision, doesn't it? When you cut that out, and if
Definitely.
you're one of these people that can open a bottle of wine and take 2 weeks to finish it, then fantastic. But I was
Definitely
never one of
wasn't
those
me.
people.
That was definitely wasn't,
Me.
definitely
Two
not me.
weeks. Wow.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
wow.
Well, you know what? I think sometimes it still kind of baffles me when you'll see folks get up from a table at a restaurant or something, and there's still like a little bit of wine in their glass or beer in the pint glass or something. It's like, why would you not finish that?
Oh God, yeah.
Even
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't drink today, and I still think it like, why you have an opportunity to
Yeah.
drink that way?
Yeah.
But that's the way my brain works.
Mm,
I don't want it, but like
mm,
you fool for not finishing
Mm,
it. Like if you can drink like a normal person, why wouldn't you? But
mm,
that's just where my brain goes.
mm,
And I'm so glad that that desire is gone. I don't want to pick it up. But it's interesting with the thought process too, coming back to that even the idea of having a drink later in the day or over the weekend, it's weird how it gives that relief. And I think that even my example of when I was in Kuwait and someone just telling me that, hey, there will be booze at this occasion, I already started to feel that mental and
mm,
that physical relief,
mm,
mm,
and I think that that's a question for folks too, if they're considering or thinking about like maybe I should cut down, maybe I should stop. Is it like, all right, well, are you going through your work week already thinking, okay, the weekend's coming, I can drink then, or looking at the clock and thinking, all right, well, after such and such a time, I can finally crack open that beer or that bottle of wine. Um, and it's like, well, yeah, maybe if that's taking up that mental bandwidth as well, maybe there's something there that, um, yeah, maybe just stop for a bit.
Mm,
Save your energy.
I think you
do an
just have to,
experiment.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just think you have to trust your instincts because most,
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. I've started to think a lot recently actually because Steve and I tend to work with people in their forties quite often,
Hmm.
and one thing that I see day in day out is when people get to around 40, people start questioning, "Oh, I'm not sure I can keep doing this. Alcohol's starting to
Mm,
affect me more. It's, hangovers are lasting longer. It's just not doing what it used to when I was in my 20s and 30s." And most people sort of have that thought and think that they're a bit strange and it's just them. They're a bit odd.
Mm,
But the
mhm.
reality is, and I go out on a limb here, but I think anyone who is in their 40s who is drinking regularly feels that way, whether or not they voice it or not. I
yeah.
think everyone has a sense, everyone has the instinct that, "Oh, I'm just not sure I can keep doing this," unless you're
Yeah.
literally drinking like one glass of wine a week. I think if you're drinking regularly, like 2 or 3 times a week, I think everyone in their 40s has that feeling. I would
Yeah.
be as upfront about it as that.
I'd agree. I'd
Yep.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I think
crazy.
it's just, I think in our teens or 20s, or I mean, I guess, yeah, 20s more,
It's
that
different at that
our
age, though.
bodies are just so
Of
much more
course.
resilient.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we talk a lot about alcohol doing a job for us in our 20s and 30s. That
Hmm.
Annie Grace talks a lot about this. I'm probably familiar with Annie Grace. She says that the jobs we give it when we're in our 20s to to help us fit in and help us socialize and all those kind of things, and maybe in our 30s it's helping us switch off and relax and all that. But when you're in your 40s and into your 50s, it's just not doing those jobs anymore. Maybe you're
No.
giving it those jobs to do, but it's not doing them because things change. I think it was Carl Jung who said, what was truth in the morning of our lives will have become a lie by the evening. I think I've completely and utterly butchered that, but you get you
Yeah,
get
I
the
think that's pretty
You
there.
got it. We got it.
general
Verbal.
gist
Yeah.
of what I was saying. It's not the same. So why would you carry on doing it if your entire life? I think trust
Right.
your instincts about it.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, look,
Yeah.
Emily. I mean, it's been an absolute joy to meet you. You've been a wonderful guest. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and honestly, I would urge anyone to check out your art because really is pretty special. Where can people
Thank
find out
you.
more about you?
The website, emilyricestudio.com. And then
Hmm.
also my Instagram's updated a little bit more. It's emily.taylor.rice.studio.
And it's awesome.
Yeah,
And it's been absolute pleasure. We will 100% put that in the show notes as well so that people can check out your work. And I also voice
perfect.
what James is saying, and I strongly urge people to go and check it out because it's
Mm.
absolutely fantastic. And
I'd like to come and see some of your art because I'm over in Pennsylvania. Over in Pittsburgh in August, so I don't know if there's anywhere I can actually go and see. I don't know if I guess you don't say see it live. That's probably the wrong expression.
Well,
listen,
You
in
see, I'm an
person,
absolute
yeah.
expert when it comes to art, but
Yeah,
my wife's actually is
call it, yeah.
very much an art person,
Mm.
so I would love to come and see some of your art.
that'd be great.
Where,
I
where,
have my studio in town, so if you want to venture outside of Pittsburgh and
how far
on a
outside
little road
Pittsburgh
trip.
is it? Tell me exactly where it is because my wife will be listening to this and she'll
Oh,
want to
it's in
figure out where it
Indiana,
is.
Pennsylvania.
Indiana, Pennsylvania. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, honey, we've
I,
got to
f-
go there. Okay.
I
Indiana,
feel
it's not too far. It's about an hour and 15, 20. Yeah.
Okay, that's
can we
doable.
put this down as a business trip, James? An
Oh, good
alcohol-free
idea, Steve.
Yeah, you'll have
revolution.
to let me
Yeah,
know.
it's got to be a
That'd
business
be
Well,
trip
great.
then
I'll keep.
somehow.
We'll keep in touch because I might, like I say, we may well come down because, like I say, my wife loves art and she hates the fact that I don't really go to galleries or museums very often. So the idea of
Yeah.
me going to an art gallery, she'll want to come for sure. So
Or going to see it live, as you
going
just
to see
put
it live, yeah.
it.
Well, that'd be funny. 'Cause then we could say we were in two places at the same time. Because didn't we realize that we were both at the
Oh yeah.
Steelers game in
Sorry, yeah.
London back
So
in
so
2013?
we're both Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Obviously, that's where Emily's from. Obviously, Chris is from Pittsburgh, so I'm a Steelers fan by marriage. And we were both at Wembley for the first. For I think I can't remember when it was. It would have been about 10 years ago, wouldn't it?
It had to have, yeah, I think it was 2013.
Yeah, it
We
was the
played the
Steelers
Vikings.
against the Vikings, and we lost. And I remember I've got a
Yes.
picture of Chris holding up a terrible towel. And
Yeah.
for anyone who doesn't know anything about American football, that's I don't know, it's a towel basically.
The Pittsburgh,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
the
the
Pittsburgh
Pittsburgh emblem.
emblem.
You kind
Yeah.
of it's like
Yeah.
a flag you wave basically. And yeah, we were both at that game.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
I
Yeah.
was I was definitely not sober for the game, but I was there.
I didn't
Yeah.
want to ask. I was going to say, I was doing the maths then in terms of when that was. I was thinking, okay. So let me just ask you just quickly before we go. How did you come to be in the UK for that? You can just come over purely to watch the game, surely.
I was living in Kuwait, and I was actually dating a Scotsman in Kuwait, and we happened to be visiting. I think we went to visit his family in Scotland, and then let me see if I get this family relation right. His sister's boyfriend's father was from Pittsburgh, so he got the whole family
Mm.
Steelers
Oh,
tickets, and we're like, okay, yeah, we'll go. And so we went from we must have been in Scotland before that, and then went up for the game. Probably were there for maybe 3 days.
Yeah, yeah. So you
oh,
saw a bit of
Yeah.
London.
What's that?
You saw a bit of London.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, fantastic.
oh.
Didn't end
yeah.
up marrying the Brit then in the end.
Nope,
Lucky escape.
nope, nope. Lovely guy, lovely family. Didn't work out. Another
Oh,
consequence of alcohol.
Oh
You
well.
know,
Well, the
it's
Scots like
true.
their booze. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the
yeah.
Scots can put it away. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I feel like we've done the thank yous and goodbyes bit, and then we've gone back into it. But it was all completely necessary. But Emily,
Yeah.
thank you so much again for being so generous with your time. And
Oh,
yeah,
it's been an
we'll
Thank you
keep
honor.
so
in
much.
touch. We'll keep in touch 100%. And
Definitely.
wish you all the very best with your art. And thank you for coming on and sharing everything so openly.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Emily.
Thank you for
Thank you very
having
much.
me.
Anytime.
Take
We'll
care.
speak to you again soon.
Bye bye.
Take care
All
now.
right. Take care. Thanks.